Thank you.
A roadblock getting over to you because I've had the COVID crisis over Christmas period and then could not get a negative result. But it's great to be with you. And we have a fantastic session, as Remy was talking about. It's how you build an ecosystem, and we're using Saudi Arabia as our case study. Let me introduce our full-fledged panel here. We've got 7 of us joining, some from virtually and some there in Saudi Arabia. Doug Kirwin is an exploration geologist. Richard Schodde is the managing director of MinEx Consulting. He's joining us from Melbourne virtually. Mr. Zahrani is the vice president of exploration at Saudi Aramco. Philipp Schmidt-Thomé is the international operations director, Geological Survey of Finland. He's joining us there from the country. Joachim Berlenbach is the chief executive officer of our Earth Resource Investment Group. Bill Brodie Good is the chief executive officer and the technical director of Allen Metals, joining us virtually. And Professor Yao Wensheng is a project manager for the Geochemical Survey on the Arabian Shield for the China Geological Survey. It's great to have everybody here. I'm glad we could pull it all together technically. I'd like to start with Doug Irwin, and because we're focused on the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Doug, I'd like to kind of put out the analogy. If you had a magic wand and you could do this within a 30-minute period and say, I'm going to touch this, 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 and this, up to 4 points, what are the key points with a magic wand you'd like to touch to accelerate the development in Saudi Arabia, would you suggest?
I think that most mining companies are commodity focused. And so when they decide to explore globally for the commodity of interest, the first thing to look at probably is the jurisdiction and the climate for the mining regulations. Second would be the geology, probably for most companies. And so here in this part of the world with the Arabian-Nubian Shield, the potential is just amazing. It's barely explored. But if the mining company chooses the jurisdiction, fine. The next step would be, okay, what's the available information for the commodity that we're looking for? And it's very important that they have access to quality data. And I'd like to say that here, the Geological Survey has done an amazing job of compiling a huge amount of data. They have the National Geologic database website that's interactive, and they're also working on an international standard metallogenic map. This will come out, I think, in the next 18 months. So the jurisdiction is great. The available information is excellent. And this is 2 things that are key to attract a foreign investor for the commodity that they might be looking for.
Thanks very much, Doug, for that. Richard Schodde joining us from Melbourne. Is it a key component of this architecture or ecosystem transparency right across the board, legacy data as well included in that equation, Richard?
Yeah, it's very important, or it's absolutely critical that a company will make an investment in areas where it feels comfortable that the rules aren't going to change. So it's come up in previous sessions in this conference that consistency and transparency are essential starting points for a successful mining industry. So, yeah.
I would say His Excellency Bandar Al-Koreev, the Minister of Industry and Mineral Resources, would like to be tested. I think that's the spirit of His Royal Highness Mohammed bin Salman, the Crown Prince. What would you say, Richard, in that area, if you're going to look for improvements here and speed to market that the Kingdom would need to tackle? And I'm going to pose the question to others on this panel as well.
To speed up the whole process, you've got to have the delivery, the availability and delivery of data. That has happened, as Doug mentioned, and from my own personal experience, that has happened. You've got to have a clear set of investment rules so that people can know that they're going to own the project and that they can raise finance both internationally and locally for it. You need access to people. It's critical that you have consultants and professionals who can do the field work for you. that you also have the legal availability, the teams of legal people available. So these are all sort of elements that you've got to have in place up front for you to be fast and efficient in doing your exploration programs there. I mean, junior companies or even major companies can't afford to sit around for 2 or 3 years waiting for the release of land and the approval of projects. They want to get onto the ground straight away. So we need that to happen.
Okay, very good. Thanks very much for Richard taking that follow-up. I'd like to bring in Misfir Zahrani, the Vice President of Exploration at Aramco. For those of us that know the kingdom, we know the pillars of oil and gas, and Aramco doing much more beyond that, of course. Petrochemicals with Sabic, Ma'aden driving the mineral development right now. What can we learn, Misfir, about the Aramco ecosystem itself and what can be translated to the mining sector in your view?
Thank you very much, John. First, let me say that I'm very pleased and honored to be part of this panel, which is in a way a surprise that the new age of technology is bringing two physically and two virtually, which proves the point that borders have no impact on communication. And I think that message is strong, that people can collaborate regardless where they are in the world. Now, the other question is, what is Saudi Aramco doing in this panel? That the discussion is about mining. I would like to shed some light about Saudi Aramco's experience in searching for oil and gas, not for minerals. I would like to remind everyone that exploration, whether for oil and gas or for minerals, have almost the same principles. We're looking for resources. We do almost the same exploration. But I think what helped Saudi Aramco is actually two things, and we're proud of these two: resilience and agility. Throughout Saudi Aramco, we have experienced many changes. And once we determined that the change is for the benefit of the company, we move, and we move fast. And that cannot be done without three enablers. And the first one is our people. People who are equipped with the know-how. Our development and training in the company is from hire to retire. With that, we feel safe. Second is our operational excellence processes and workflows through which we raise our standards and we achieve them. And we achieve them because, third, we invest in technology. Today, we have research centers in the kingdom and outside the kingdom as well. We have 2 global research centers in the US. We have 2 in Europe. We have 1 in Moscow, 1 in Beijing. These are our extended arms to technology through which we bring technology, the latest, to help us explore and develop our resources. Later on, I'll share with you our experience throughout the history of the company in the 80 years that probably the companies can learn from, probably later in this panel.
Okay, thanks very much, Misfir. I've had the great honor of visiting the HQ and then in the fields as well, so I know the DNA of the company, and to have that into the mining sector, that expertise transferred over, I think is superb. And that brings me to Philipp Schmidt-Thomé joining us from Finland. How do you create that mining DNA, would you say, Philipp? And what can we learn from the Finnish example, the point that we had Richard bring up in terms of transparency? Aramco is everything when it comes to transparency and in kind of the internal rules and structures here of efficiency. What would you say for the mining sector here for Saudi Arabia, and what is actually mission critical?
Well, thank you very much, and thank you very much also for the former speakers. I think there's 3 points that are quite clear, and I want to congratulate Saudi Arabia on doing really great work in the first steps. So one is, of course, the data, which has been mentioned several times. There needs to be excellent data. And as we in Finland, we provide it for free and we provide it online. And Saudi Arabia has just actually launched last month the National Geodatabase. So it is really doing a great step forward here. Of course, this needs to be maintained and this needs to be updated regularly. What also comes to the data, and this has also been mentioned already, is of course legacy data. So this is the National Core Library, or you need the core data that you have from earlier explorations, and that also needs to be maintained. Also here, Saudi Arabia is doing a great step forward in building up a new National Core Library that will also be running digitally. The same as we do here in Finland, and I just learned actually from Richard that you have a similar, or even probably more modern version in New South Wales. But then the other very important issue that has also been touched already is the interplay of authority. So when you want to attract investors, there need to be very clear rules on the mineral policy, the mining policy. What is the way to get your permits? How long does it take? And if you have a permit, then you go for the next step. And you can then rely on that every single step is clear. You know exactly what are the rules you play with, and that there are no surprises at the end of the day. So you can plan, as Richard has actually said, you can plan ahead forward and you know exactly what to expect. I guess these are 3 of the most important cornerstones, and I can see that Saudi Arabia is really doing great steps ahead here.
Yes, we've seen the roadmap when it comes to investment and the rest. I appreciate your directness. Let's bring in Joachim Berlenbach of Earth Resources Investment Group. One of the things that came up in the panel earlier that we had, Joachim, is the ESG principles and the pressures of where the money will go into here. And how do we ensure that the mining industry, and let's use the Saudi example here, we know what transparency Aramco has delivered on its net zero targets to 2050 in the country to 2060. What is so important when it comes to ESG as the kingdom builds out the mining sector in your view?
Yeah, thanks, John. I want to start with a word of caution. The energy transition to which economic mining or the eco-mining system belongs is an industrial revolution. It can be compared with the invention of the combustion engine or the invention of the steam engine. And it's a first industrial revolution that is where the goalposts, where the time posts are being guided by politicians and not by scientists and engineers. And timelines like the climate goals, targets 2030, 2050 are very, very ambitious. And we as a mining industry have to fit in here somehow. A good example about how problematic politics can get is currently the discussion in Europe about the introduction of nuclear energy. Is it a sustainable energy source or is it not? So here Saudi Arabia comes in with a blank plate, and Saudi Arabia can really start from scratch. And hopefully it's going to be very science-based. We heard a lot in the previous sessions and panels about the upside and the potential of the Nubian Shield. We can see wind turbines and we can see solar panels everywhere here in this country. That's there. Or salination plants, it's another one. We developed an award-winning ESG system for the mining industry, which we apply in one of our funds. And one of the very critical topics that always comes up is disruptive technologies. So one can see these wind turbines, these windmills being built, one can see these solar panels, all that creates energy. So the energy for the mining industry probably comes in Saudi Arabia and in this environment very cheaply. But for mining, for example, you also need to store energy. Yeah? A mill is running 24 hours per day. So how do you run that mill in the night? And here, for example, that's where disruptive technologies are coming in and should be explored by Saudi Arabia and the companies working here. How do you supply energy at night? And that could be through batteries, for example, through redox flow. Vanadium redox flow batteries is one topic that comes up. And if you think here out of the box a little bit, for example, one of the biggest sources for vanadium is oil. Yeah? Oil in refineries is a pollutant, it's a poison for a refinery. But now you could actually explore, does oil actually help in the energy transition from an ESG point of view? Another thing could be using gravity-supported battery systems like Energy Vault. It's a company that works in it's working in Switzerland, where you use during the day you lift cement blocks basically up, and at night you create potential energy. At night you let these drop, and thereby you could potentially now create energy storage systems that could help to build this mining industry in here. There's huge potential here, but apart from the obvious, the geology, the technology, all that, there needs to be also a thinking outside of the box. And that's, I believe, a great opportunity for Saudi Arabia and the young generation that's coming up here. And that would be my next point, thinking outside the normal box of ESG thinking is training the next generation, the young generation. And they need to be aware how important resources are coming. Quite honestly, at the current commodity prices, we don't have the cobalt, the lithium, the copper or the nickel to actually generate this amount of renewable energy that we need over the next 20, 30 years. It's just not doable. That I tell you as a geologist and like my colleagues here. Yeah. So we're going to see rising commodity prices. That makes, I think, also for the younger generation, makes entering the sector interesting. And from that point of view, I think ESG needs an important part is the training of people. If I have one more minute, I would like to discuss that how
actually, Joachim, why don't you hold it there, and I'm going to come circle back to you, right? So why don't you keep it there? That was excellent roadmap, and in fact, it's the question I wanted to carry on with Bill Brodie Good, who's also here in the UK. We talked about the Aramco example, making sure you train all your petroleum engineers. And what Joachim was saying is that we have to make ESG fashionable, in a sense, to the next generation of employees. How do you build that ecosystem in education, would you say, Bill, as a priority here, and making sure that they're both technology trained, but also trained in the mining sector, which most people would shy away from if I talk to the Gen Zers?
Thanks very much, John, and it's really interesting listening to everybody so far. I think it's about training. Earlier there was discussion about availability of personnel to support any work on the ground, and coming from a junior exploration company, obviously people are critical for being able to develop a project or projects. So as well as being able to bring people who already have that experience into projects, I think, as you say, a key point is training of the next generation, who will also learn in a different way. I think ESG will be probably one of the core. It'll be ESG 101, for example, as part of any development for a geologist, a mining engineer, as they move into a new world of development. But I think we can all still give them a lot of support. We just have a longer term view, and I think Richard mentioned about being able to have a longer strategy where you've got the security of tenure, you've got the support of the state, that that as you move forward you invest. As a company, as a junior, we could invest in training, say, a couple of geologists, be it to move to grow with the company, and then they take the mantle when we're long gone. They're then the next generation and have developed in this new world.
Okay. Do you think it's important, very quickly, Bill, that we make the connection that if you're going to be working in this sector, you're actually helping solve the energy transition at the same time? Isn't there a disconnect in society?
There is still, and it is frustrating. I'm sure everyone here gets frustrated on occasion how people sort of are against mining. But at the end of the day, we're talking about all these materials. Where are you going to get the materials from? They come from mining. They need to be sourced from the earth. And as we learn to do it more environmentally friendly, socially supportive of local stakeholders, and with the correct support from in governance. It's an education process that also, even as a junior company, that's a big focus of what we do. We're working to help the world, to develop the right technologies, the right products that the world can use to for the future generations.
Yeah, and to the demand that we see here, I think the IEA was suggesting, the International Energy Agency, that between now and 2050, for us to hit this target of capping global warming at 1.5 degrees, a six-fold increase in the strategic minerals that we're talking about in terms of mining. So the growth is definitely there. Let's bring in Professor Yao Wensheng of the China Geological Survey. He's watching, of course, the developments that we have in the Arabian Peninsula at the same time. But I think we should start with the lessons that China can share with the world here, Professor. Looking back 30 or 40 years, it looks very prescient, the control it has over the products, about 85%, 54% of supplies. What's the advice that China would lend to Saudi Arabia, and is already doing so, I'm sure, in the development of this very critical sector for the Middle East and North Africa?
Okay, thank you, John, very much. It is of vital importance that the mining community takes a long-term view and learns to be proactive than reactive. So for this mining forum, the future minerals, we talk about what is the future minerals, where, and how to find it. It's important. I think I can't give you all the 30 answers because the future is a lot of uncertain. But I can tell you, the future minerals already listed in periodic table. That's why our project conducted. For our project is one of our project of the RGP, funded by Saudi Arabia government. For my project, I'm a geochemist. I just talk about the geochemical survey project. For this project is one of the largest regional geochemical survey project nowadays in the world. Because its mapping area is 600,000 square kilometers. Its area is larger than more than 140 countries area. It's large. For our determined elements is 76 elements. It's near all the natural elements listed in the periodic table. We plot its distribution on the Arabian Shield. So it will give us a lot of information for future mining. That is important. More important for this project, for so large area, for so many elements, according to the routine operation, maybe it need more than 50 years. In some countries, near 100 years, according to the past experience. But nowadays, we promised to the Saudi government, we complete this job within 6 years. For our date is globally comparable. All our elements detect limits is lower than crust abundance. For this date is very important, not only for mineral resources exploration, we will also give a solid basis for future environment studies. So my team work here for already 4 months. We have a good cooperation with the Saudi Arabia counterparts and also with the international technical partners. So we are confident to provide a good resource for Saudi. Also, for this project, also one good example for the region You know, past I have been the UNESCO Center's Secretary Director. I know the International Geochemical Survey development. For this region, for geochemical survey is not developed. A lot of areas have not been mapped. So I hope for the regional country can cooperate together, not only map the Saudi Arabia Shelf, but also the Nubia Shelf and other regions. For this work, we'll give the mining community a promising prospecting result for the future resources mining. Okay, that's mine.
Okay, excellent. Thanks a lot, Professor. I appreciate that. And I wasn't surprised by the level of collaboration that you talked about between China and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, particularly, again, if you point to Aramco and the collaboration between the Minister of Energy, you would see absolutely the same thing. I want to pose a question that I want to share with a number of different people on the panel, and that is the development as a mining hub. I know Richard Schodde, for example, wanted to talk about this. Can the kingdom be the mining hub for the Middle East and North Africa? Does it have the DNA in which to do so? If you look at its oil and gas experience, and can it transfer to this sector? Doug Kirwin, why don't you jump in there?
Yeah, for sure. A technical hub, and this has been successfully applied in a number of countries, and in particular some of the shield areas. For example, in West Africa, all of the countries that comprise the Birimian. It's also been applied in the Guyanan Shield, which is many of the countries in North, East and South America. There's been some really interesting collaborative issues between government, academia and industry. And these are programs that are designed for research for periods of 5 to 10 years. They're medium to long term. And the brief of these initiatives is to advance the level of scientific knowledge about the geology and the mineral deposits. And I think that the Arabian-Nubian Shield would be an obvious place where such an initiative could be established, based here in the kingdom. And I think that would go a long way to advancing the level of knowledge. It's industry, government, and academia. It's also an excellent opportunity, and panelists have already touched on this, about the requirement to train the younger generation who are going to take these for the next 30 to 50 years. There's a tremendous pool of young, talented people. It's a matter of how we can provide the opportunities for them to become involved. So just from a geologic perspective, I think something like that might be worth considering, because it's been successfully applied in other regions of the world and in similar geologic environments.
It's very interesting. And if I look at the 35,000-foot view of it, Doug, if you will, oil and gas was in the DNA of the kingdom and the other Gulf players, of course. In financial centers today, tourism centers today, would only make sense for the kingdom to capture the space in mining. Richard, you were very passionate about this subject yourself with the Australian model here. What would you say about the kingdom becoming, does it have the DNA, the resources, geographical position to take the mantle?
Absolutely, 100%. When you think about, when people mention the word mining hubs, they think of places like London, Toronto, Vancouver, Perth, those sort of locations, but there is no location which naturally covers the Middle East. So I see there is a gap in the market for such a hub to exist somewhere in the Middle East. When you actually look at those country cities that I mentioned before, there's two features that jump out at me. One is that A, they don't have mines next door to the cities, particularly London. The second thing is that when you look at the activities that are run out of those hubs, it's more about people hopping on planes and flying to those other locations within that region to do the work, the field work. And then they go back to their home base. So there's a couple elements that go with that. One is that you've got to be in the same time zones. So people in Australia can't really manage projects in the Middle East. The other thing is that you need to have a hub where people can be trained up. So you've got a pool of talented people coming in. You've got to have a location that people feel safe in, and it has a supportive government. So, and it has great infrastructure, both communications and transport. You can hop on a plane and fly anywhere. So I see Saudi Arabia and places like Riyadh or Jeddah as a natural location for such a hub for the Middle East. The other things that you've got to have in there are things like good taxation and investment policies. You've got to have a pool of talented in terms of the support services that go with it, the consultants, the legal system, the engineers that are going to help build these mines. And you really need to have a whole range of things. And I think that the Saudi Arabia ticks just about all of those boxes. So I'm 100% behind the concept of developing a hub here in Saudi Arabia. It can and it will happen.
Well, interesting. Mr. Zahrani, I talked about the Aramco DNA before when I've gone on to the huge facilities that you have, and even the residence community there for your expatriate workers at the same time. There's a certain DNA that exists, and why the King Salman and Mohammed bin Salman have kind of pushed Aramco into other directions to support the development and diversification of the economy. What needs to be transferred in that DNA into the mining sector for success, do you think?
Thank you, John. Good question, and I'm going to address it from two perspectives. First, I've been in the business of searching for oil and gas for 40 years. And throughout the 40 years, the company made many, many oil and gas discoveries. Onshore, offshore, shallow, deep. None one of these discoveries came easy. Every single discovery came after many challenges, setbacks, failures, disappointments. But in this business, all you need to be is optimistic, take a calculated risk, mitigate it, trust in God, and go. And that's what we are doing in Saudi Aramco. We invest in technology, we mitigate the risk, we know what we're looking for, we learn from our experience. In fact, the journey of Saudi Aramco itself, since the beginning, taught us a lesson. In 1933, the concession agreement was signed. 5 years of disappointments, a year after another, a failure after another, until Max Steinicke and his team, at the end, in 1938, struck oil in the prosperity well. That changed the face of the energy in the world. So geologists made a big change. In fact, they were about ready to pack and leave. But because of dedication, perseverance, and belief in the cause. Searching for oil and gas is not different than searching for minerals. In fact, in addition to my experience in oil and gas, I came so close to mining because I spent 1 year developing with my distinguished members, developing the mining strategy as a geologist, borrowed from Saudi Aramco. So I came so close to it, and I know details of it. I know how much potential it holds, but I also know how much work and investment it requires. There's huge potential. My friend Yao just mentioned that 600,000 square kilometers is underexplored. That 600,000 square kilometers, we have hundreds of signs of minerals everywhere. So I don't have to convince our geoscience community. All I have to convince is the investors. This is where the high risk, high reward. You won't regret it. This is a region that is healthy and wealthy, and I think the system and the ecosystem here is helping people to succeed. It's a win-win-win.
Okay, thank you very much, Misfir. It's great insights. I'm enjoying it, even watching from afar here. We have just 5 minutes. I'm going to ask our panelists here as I close out the final three to be very tight with these answers. And Philipp, I think it's very important to come to you and give us the Finnish model. And what I say here is that you're a big believer in data transparency, legacy data as well, that transparency when it comes to the code and also to investment laws. How vital is it as this journey takes off here in the kingdom that people have that absolute trust that it will be delivered, as they say, at this juncture?
Well, I can only repeat myself in this case that it is absolutely vital, and I don't want to repeat myself too often because I think Saudi Arabia is now having the new mining law in place, so they're running the first steps that are in the right direction. I would like to come back for what Richard said earlier. I think he had some brilliant ideas, and I want to pinpoint this one also as the Finnish model is the infrastructure. So that's what many people told me. You know, in Finland, if you invest somewhere, we've got an excellent road network. We've got an excellent port network. We've got a whole network of the downstream industry, smelters and so forth. Actually, Finland has more smelters than we produce minerals. I mean, other countries are using Finnish technology here. And what is also very important is the Geological Survey of Finland is the only one in the world that actually has, or we're running an own test plant, right? So where you can do your flotation tests and so forth. We have the lab and the plant. So we've got all of this infrastructure in place. And this is actually what comes on top of, as I earlier said, reliable authorities, reliable networks, reliable regulations, reliable laws, excellent data, and a transparent system. This is what makes the investors believe. This is what makes the investors confident. And this is why we have this continuous inflow of investment into the Finnish mining sector, because it is an absolutely trustworthy country. And I believe that Saudi Arabia is paving the way to become a hub. Last thing, coming back to Richard, I mean, the global position of Saudi Arabia in what I would call Western Asia is actually really a good place and position to build such a hub.
Yeah. The crossroads between East and West. I didn't mean to jump on you there, but I'm a little bit tight on time, so I'm going to bring in Bill. And I know one point that you wanted to talk about, Bill, and I was thinking about the analogy in oil and gas, the wildcatters of Texas, right? As Misfir was talking about the first exploration well that we had in Saudi Arabia, you had to have patience, but you had to let the small and medium-sized players have some space, get financed, let them have confidence. Why is that so vital for Saudi Arabia? 90 seconds from you, and then I'm going to wrap with Professor Yao.
Okay, thanks everyone else. I think it's vital you have the juniors in there doing what junior explorers do. They often take ground that's very that's virgin, that's untested, but they will add significant data to the larger database. They will make discoveries, early discoveries, that the larger companies aren't looking to do. They don't have the teams, they don't have the infrastructure to do that. So making it attractive for junior companies like Alien Metals to have a low-cost entry with a focus on spending money on the ground, having the support from the state to allow people to move freely, come in, come out, with limited sort of paperwork in the background, I think is a significant would be a significant addition to the growth of the kingdom's development.
Okay, thanks for the brevity on that, Bill, but it was right, straight and to the point. Professor Yao, you have 90 seconds to wrap it up, and I think this is a critical macro issue, not just related to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, which is a member of the WTO. When can we all get along? This seems to be a dogfight for strategic minerals, and everybody's got a different formula here. China's a leader in the space. Where do we get collaboration on a global level where Saudi Arabia feels very comfortable coming to the market, knows it'll have its space, and that the big players of the world will get along in this space?
The deposit have the boundary, maybe controlled, belong to each country. But the deposit formation is globally. So with searching for the resources, we need our region globally cooperation. So FORMA have conducted a global cooperation on geochemical survey. I hope for our region and also cooperation together for the future mineral resourcing. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. I appreciate that. And the collaboration obviously needed as the kingdom takes this journey. That's 7 panelists in 42 minutes. Not bad. I have to say, I appreciate the panel and their very direct responses all the way around, sharing different ideas and a lot of value add on establishing the mining ecosystem for the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. I'm going to toss it back, as they say, to Riyadh. Again, I thank the Minister of Industry and Mineral Resources for the invitation, and I'll see you in less than 24 hours from now back in the forum. Thanks very much.